So when you're talking with someone you just met at a dinner party or a social function, or maybe in conversation with someone you don't know very well, the topic of religion may come up. And they may ask you, well, what's your religion? What's your faith tradition? And to that you may answer, I'm a Christian, or you may say, I'm a Lutheran. When I moved to New York several years ago, I realized that when you say Lutheran, you might not get a knowing response to that statement. There's just not as many Lutherans out here in the Northeast as there are in the Midwest, where I've spent so much of my life. So after I realized this, if the question of my faith tradition is posed to me, I may begin by saying, I'm Christian, and then I say, I'm Protestant, and then I say, I'm Lutheran, and I often get that look, what's Lutheran? And then explain a little bit more what that means. Okay, so imagine for a moment you are at a party, and someone asks you your faith tradition, and you answer, I am salt. I am light. I am a city on a hill. If Lutheran makes people look at you in a confused way, I can only imagine identifying yourself as salt might cause a confused look coming your way. It might even elicit a response of something like, that's really nice, I need to go get another plate of food. So there are many ways we describe ourselves. The way we describe who we are in our faith tradition: Christian, Protestant, Lutheran, yes. Also, follower, disciple, believer. Those are words we use to describe ourselves too. But salt, light, and city on a hill, not so much. And yet, these are the words Jesus uses to describe us here. And notice he doesn't speak in metaphor. There's no like. You are not like salt. You're not like a city on a hill. You're not like light. You are. You are. And he speaks to all of them. It's a you all. You people are this. So we're in the Sermon on the Mount, as you know, and we're right after the Beatitudes. And these verses happen just before Jesus launches into the ethics, how to live a life as his followers. It's before he tells them these things. Soon enough, later in this chapter, he's going to be laying out for them how to handle anger, how to handle oaths, how you love enemies, about adultery. But before he gets to this kingdom behavior, and before he gets to the specifics of how to act, he takes this moment to tell them who they are. It's easy to gloss over. They're beautiful words. It's easy to kind of gloss over them. And over this week, I was like, well, why here? Why does Jesus do this here? And it actually made me think of a basketball game. Or pick any sort of sporting event. It could be a musical event too, if you're getting, part of an orchestra and getting ready for a big performance or something. But let's stick with the basketball metaphor here, because I'm most familiar with it. So imagine it's a basketball game, and it's a heated game, and one team is behind, and they just don't know if they can pull it out, and their coach calls a timeout. She calls a timeout, and the players come over to the sidelines, and they look a little dejected, a little worried, a little nervous. Can they really pull this one out? And she sits them down on the sidelines, and she looks at them, and she takes just a second to tell them who they are. She says, hey, you're the Bulldogs. Or, hey, you're the Huskies. Or pick whatever team it is, right? Hey, this is who you are. And in that split second, they hear that. They hear you're the Bulldogs or the Huskies or the Horsemen or whoever is your team. And something registers with them. And they remember. And they remember their school. And they remember their friends and their students. And finally, in that nervous, worrisome moment, they know who they are. And only after she's told them who they are, does she then launch into the play that's going to clinch the win for them. I wonder if that might be something like what Jesus is doing here. Before giving them the ethical how-to of being Before the specifics, he tells them who they are. You're light, you are salt, and you are a city on a hill. These are motivators. They are describers and reminders of what it means to live on this earth in Jesus' name. And he uses vivid words, and they're functional words. They're words of function. In this world in which Jesus' life and death and resurrection have come to usher in God's kingdom, God's reign, it's also a world where that reign hasn't fully come yet. We're just not there yet. And we know we're not there yet, deeply. And in our hearts, we know we're not there yet. Just look around at the world for just a second, and we know we are not in God's reign fully yet. In our national life, the appalling reality of racial prejudice just persists. The tragedy of Tyree Nichols' murder at the hands of police officers. Violence that persists in the mass murders around the country in a land where guns are so readily available. In our world, nations deny human rights to their own citizens. Armies invade countries. And that's not where it stops. It happens in our personal lives, too. We feel the hurt of broken relationships. We continue to place ourselves first instead of God. I don't need to continue in this list of ways in which we know God's kingdom has not yet fully come. As followers of the Christ who's crucified for us on a cross, we stand with one foot in God's kingdom and one foot in the hurtful reality of a fallen world. And in this fallen world, Jesus gets us together and huddles us close, where we rub elbows with one another and says, you are salt, you are light, you are a city on a hill. Now there's so much to say about each of these images, and not one sermon can possibly do it, so I won't try. But one thing they all have in common is that they function not for their own sake, but for the sake of something else. Salt is added to food to bring out the food's flavor, right? I mean, some of you might like salt so much you dip your hand in the salt. I bet you that happens too. But really, it's an enhancer too. The function of light is not for the light itself, but to, as the kid said, to show the way, to illuminate other things. And a city on a hill, which is such a beautiful image, it's there to be looked at, to be an example. In using these ways to describe us, Jesus makes clear that following him is not solely an interior exercise. It's not just personal and private. Following him is inherently about other people. To use a church word, following Christ is by nature missional. It's missional. It's outward focused. It reaches out with an outstretched hand. And this is so far back in our tradition. We read it in Isaiah, where Isaiah says you can't just do things, you can't just worship, that's wonderful, but you gotta get out there. Words like get out there and do something about the injustice. Clothe the naked. Do something. I'm sorry, it wasn't Isaiah, was it? Was it Isaiah? It was Isaiah. Last week we had Micah. Do something about it. In the ways we live, in the ways we must speak out for equality, for injustice, that's our light. That's the light that we show the world. We light the way in holding someone's hand who's mourning. When we ask for forgiveness from someone we've wronged, that's a light. We light the way when we tell others about things that we're doing here at Trinity, like a food drive, when we receive them here at our doors and bring in the groceries and deliver them to people in need. When you go and buy toothbrushes at Target or wherever you buy toothbrushes and make those personal hygiene kits that we take just miles down to White Plains to the coachman's shelter. That's light. Don't make a mistake about it. That is light in the world. We can't give in to sometimes the temptation that we don't have much to give as Jesus followers. That somehow our light isn't quite strong enough. Or maybe as a congregation, sometimes it can be tempting to think we're small and our means are tight, which might be true. And we might think that because of that, we don't have a light to show. Let's not give into that temptation. The light of Trinity, the light of each of us, individually and communally, matters. And no one else has that light. No one else has that light. And we're called to be it by Christ. As a young child, I lived in Oregon, and about an hour away from where we lived was the Oregon coast. Beautiful. I highly suggest it for a family trip if you have looking for a trip to take. We often visited a beautiful lighthouse on the Oregon coast near Florence. It's called Heceta Head. It's also called Devil's Elbow. It sits on top of a 1,000-foot high cliff. It's a 56-foot high tower. It's first illuminated in 1894. It's quite a trek up to that lighthouse, and our family would take that trek and make the hike. You stand there and you look out over the ocean, and I think that's where my fascination with lighthouses started. It conjures up a picture in my own mind of a harrowing adventure, of a ship lost at sea, looking for the coastline, in peril. The earliest form of lighthouses were most likely bonfires on a beach or a rocky cliff like Heceta Head. Millennia have, of course, gone by since those first lighthouses emerged, and now we have lots of technology at our disposal, technology that has changed lighthouses, and Heceta Head now is its own automated illumination. But technology has also changed the way ships can navigate. We have things like GPS and other modern navigation techniques. And you might think that with all of that, we don't need lights along the coastline. That lighthouses somehow aren't necessary. Turns out it's not the case. These other navigation techniques can fail, and weather conditions can become too harsh for them to operate properly. So lights on a coastline still help to prevent tragedy to a ship at sea. They help to orient the ship's crew. I recently researched and found this is the case in the barrier coral reef along the Florida Keys. Has anyone been down there? Another beautiful spot. The reef arches for 200 miles, mostly along the coast of the Keys. And on the edge is this powerful Gulf Stream. And so it causes hundreds of vessels to ram up against the reef. So as recently as in 2013, with the support of the boating community there, the U.S. Coast Guard installed 2 new 40-foot tall steel structures with LED lights that can be seen 14 nautical miles away. Modern day lighthouses can be seen from all directions. So for all of our great technology, bright light is still the best. Bright light is still the best. Our world, the fallenness of our world is like that barrier reef along the Keys and like the Gulf Stream right there sitting right next to it. It's perilous. That's a word to describe it. Our fallen world is perilous. And it can break us. But thanks be to God, Christ is our light. Christ, with his life, death, and resurrection, has come on our scene and has brought in the kingdom. And with Christ as our light, we reflect that light. And we show the way to him for others. And how we act and how we love, how we stand up for peace, how we stand up for justice. Until Jesus returns, that kind of light will always be in need. Your light, the light only you have to give off, will always be needed. Our light, Trinity's light, will always be needed. The world is such a fast-changing place. It's disorienting. And we might think we don't have a role, we don't have a function, or that can get really blurry sometimes. But our light and our saltiness, yours and mine, will always be needed. And Christ will always call us to be like a city on a hill, a guide to others. These are the roles we play in the kingdom, brothers and sisters. Hear it and take it to heart. You are salt, you are light, you are a city on a hill. So the next time someone asks your faith tradition, you can still just say Christian. You can still just say that. But in the back of your mind, be thinking, I, along with my community here at Trinity, I am light, I am salt, and I am sitting on a hill. And ask yourself in that split second of a moment, how can I be salt, light, and a city on a hill to the person standing right in front of me? May the peace of God that passes all understanding